Viruses arguably are not even living organisms. They are simply either DNA or RNA molecule wrapped inside a protein coat. They jump from species to multiply, causing a disease in the host, and humans are no exception. Wet markets are perfect breeding grounds for the virus. They provide easy environment for the virus to jump from one species to other, including humans, as people handle these wild animals and meet very closely in the markets. In December 2019, a novel coronavirus, SARS-CoV-2, probably from a pangolin, infected a person in Huanan Seafood and Wildlife Market of Wuhan, caused a respiratory disease which would later be called COVID-19. The RNA or DNA of a virus is a long chemical molecule made up of other submolecules called nucleobases, which are nothing but molecules made up of hydrogen, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, etc. Virus, by inserting itself into a foreign cell, directs the host cell to make more copies of itself. Humans are made up of trillions of cells with DNA in the nucleus of each cell. DNA of the human is made up of same nucleobases, which are in turn made up of same elements: hydrogen, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, etc. A human cell takes the energy from the environment, performs life functions using biochemical processes, replicates and dies. Almost 99% of the human body is made up of 6 elements: oxygen, carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, calcium and phosphorus. Only about 0.85% is composed of another 5 elements: potassium, sulfur, sodium, chlorine and magnesium. All life on the earth is constructed from some of the most abundant elements in the universe: oxygen, carbon, nitrogen, hydrogen, calcium and phosphorus. But 4.5 billion years ago, when the earth was born, it was a dead rock with no life. How life started on earth from these molecules? Where did we humans, viruses and bacteria and other animals come from? Many scientists agree that soon after the universe was born with a big bang 14 billion years ago, the only elements present were hydrogen, helium and lithium, the 3 lightest elements in the periodic table. Those hydrogen gas clouds condensed to huge balls of hydrogen gas to form the first generation of stars, which burned hydrogen gas at their core to fuse into helium, which progressively converted into heavier elements: carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, silicon, iron, etc. Some of the high-mass stars exploded at the end of their life cycle, throwing off their rich molecular contents into space, which mixed up with the nearby gas clouds, formed next generation of stars with orbiting planets. That's how our solar system was born nearly 4.5 billion years ago, and our Earth too formed in this process from the dust grains and silicates coated with ice. Because it was not too cold, not too hot, liquid water existed on the surface. But the early Earth was hot and very much volcanic with ponds and oceans. As the Earth cooled down, the conditions were perfect for life to form from these molecules: liquid water, chemicals such as hydrogen, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, sulfur, phosphorus, and energy either from the sunlight or chemical energy at the deep sea vents. Under those conditions, simple organic molecules such as amino acids formed, which eventually assembled into stable and large molecules such as nucleotides. Some of these nucleotides joined to make a long, complex and stable molecule called RNA, ribonucleic acid. Now, according to thermodynamics, as the energy gets distributed across any system towards an equilibrium, molecules self-organize themselves into more stable configurations to dissipate, to spend more energy in an organized and stable manner. So some of the RNA molecules replicated themselves in this process. Also, some of the RNA molecular configurations were more successful than others because their molecular configurations allowed them to synthesize energy from other molecules easily. So once the RNA was made, it was spontaneously enclosed in a casing formed by fatty acids or lipids, developed further, eventually giving birth to the first single cell microorganism, a bacterium, on the planet around 3.8 billion years ago. Bacteria started to appear almost everywhere on the earth in diverse locations. What that bacterium was doing? Simple. Taking the energy from the environment, maintaining its structure, replicating its genetic material, and dying. Eventually, RNA transitioned into more stable genetic material, DNA, even deep down in the oceans at hydrothermal vents where there is no sunlight energy. Some bacteria named chemolithotrophs uses inorganic molecules such as hydrogen sulfide or methane and combines them with an oxygen source, in this case seawater, to create simple sugars. Those sugars are the fuel that bacteria live off, the cycle of life. All this is controlled by DNA. DNA transcribes into an intermediate molecule, RNA, which directs to make proteins, and proteins control all of these biochemical reactions. When a bacteria replicates, there are occasional errors in the DNA sequence called mutation, which makes a different protein in the offspring. As a result, the altered protein might be better suited or less well suited for function under prevailing conditions. Although many nucleotide changes would not have any effect on the fitness of the cell, if the nucleotide change enhances the growth of the cell, even by a small degree, then the mutant form would be able to increase its numbers in the population. So as the environments changed all through the history of the earth, organisms with better mutations became more successful, and over billions of years those small molecular changes accumulated, giving rise to all the diversity of life you see on the earth today, including us. For example, a brown bear living in snowy regions gives birth to around 7 cubs in her lifetime and passes on its genes. But in DNA of the offspring, there are occasional errors in the DNA sequence, resulting in a mutation that encodes a different protein which controls the skin color of the cubs, resulting in 2 white cubs in this case. Now, the white cubs are more likely to survive in the snowy regions because they are less likely to be spotted by the prey, making them successful. Over time, the brown bear loses the competition for survival, and polar bear species evolves, the origin of the species. Molecules combine to form chemicals, and chemicals joined to create single cells, which eventually evolved into multicellular life forms: plants, birds, animals, mammals, dinosaurs, humans. All life on the earth evolved from that single cell bacteria over billions of years. After 4 billion years, our DNA molecule has evolved so complex that it contains nearly 25,000 segments called genes that control various forms and functions. DNA directs to make proteins, and proteins control all biochemical processes. For example, hemoglobin protein, the oxygen carrier in the red blood cells. A small change in the DNA can change our fate. In sickle cell anemia patients, for instance, one triplet in DNA, GAG, changes to GTG, which alters the structure of the hemoglobin protein, resulting in lack of healthy red blood cells to carry adequate oxygen throughout the body. The mutant hemoglobin protein accumulates and changes the shape of the red blood cells like a sickle, which causes excruciating pain in the bones, in joints and chest, painful swellings of hands and feet, frequent infections, and fatigue. But not all human DNA is human. 10% of human DNA is virus DNA. The struggle between humans and viruses stretches back far into the dusty depths of history, and one can find the scars of this epic battle in our DNA. For millions of years, viruses have been infecting humans to make more copies of themselves inside human cells, some of them by inserting their DNA or RNA into human DNA. If the virus epidemic is large enough in the community, it can infect an egg cell or sperm cell. Its DNA can potentially be passed to the next generation and the generation after that. Scientists have found once a gene inserted by an ancient virus near human pancreatic gene, which led to the creation of a protein named amylase in saliva that helps human digest carbohydrates and starch. The consequent ability to digest starch in the mouth has had profound effects on the human diet, notably a shift towards eating foods like rice and wheat. By helping to kickstart digestion in the mouth, amylase relieves some of the burden of breaking down food faced by small intestine. Such viruses occupy nearly 10% of human DNA, but most of them are inactive. Not only viruses, there are nearly 300 to 1,000 different species of bacteria in the human gut that help us digest food, and in return, they get constant organic material. It is mutualism, a symbiotic relationship. In fact, healthy gut bacteria mean healthy you. Some lend us helping hand, some try to kill us. There are many forces that guide the evolution. Bacteria and viruses played and will be playing an important role in human evolution. We don't know where viruses originated from. They may represent simple genetic elements that gain the ability to move between cells, or they may represent previously free living organisms that became parasites. Perhaps viruses existed before and led to the cellular life on the earth. We don't clearly know their true origins, but what we do know is that they are simply genetic material, either DNA or RNA molecules wrapped inside a protein coat that infect and multiply in the host cells. That's all. There are billions of viruses that infect literally everything on the planet. Plants, birds, mammals, marine life, and we humans are no exception. They infect to multiply in the host cells to make more copies of themselves. When they replicate, they mutate, and their mutation rate is so high that it is difficult for a vaccine to work on them, like in HIV. The war between the virus and the humans continues. Subscribe as we bring you the secrets of humans, bacteria, and viruses, and our relationship with them. Also to reveal the scientific aspects of coronavirus that causes COVID-19 through the science series Corona Chronicles. Stay tuned.